Requesting Sir to please come and set the context for today's proceedings.
Namaskar, esteemed guests, distinguished colleagues, and stakeholders. It is a privilege to welcome you all to this significant occasion as we are close to unveiling of the report, Greening the Steel Sector in India, Roadmap and Action Plan. This report is of immense importance to the future of India's steel industry and our nation's commitment to sustainable development. I'd like to begin by emphasizing that the steel sector is a critical contributor to India's economic progress, forming the backbone of our infrastructure and industrial development. However, it is also classified as hard to abate sector due to its inherently energy intensive processes and substantial carbon emissions. Key industrial processes such as use of blast furnaces and electric arc furnaces present unique challenges for decarbonization. The steel industry is vital to the nation's growth, supporting construction, manufacturing, and transportation sectors. Its significance is well established, but we must recognize that continuing business as usual is not a sustainable path forward. This report addresses the need for balanced approach, that is greening the steel at the same time ensuring that our environmental sustainability goals do not come at the expense of economic growth. We must enable the steel sector to remain competitive, productive, and efficient both domestically and on the global stage. I'd like to highlight that the Greening the Steel Sector report, initiated in March 2023, is the culmination of rigorous and tireless work led by 14 dedicated task forces constituted by Ministry of Steel. These task forces, comprising experts from various industries, academia, think tanks, and relevant ministries, have worked diligently to address the critical challenges that the steel sector faces on its decarbonization journey. The report identifies 7 critical areas of action, each designed to address the key challenges in transitioning to low carbon production. I am confident that by acting upon the strategies in this report, we can ensure that India's steel sector remains globally competitive while aligning with the nation's climate target. The roadmap also highlights the potential for collaboration across sectors, demonstrating that decarbonization can be a powerful driver of innovation and economic resilience. Today's release is not the end of journey, but the beginning of a concerted effort to transform the Indian steel sector. I would like to take this moment to acknowledge the immense dedication and collaboration of those who contributed to the preparation of this report. The efforts of task forces, supported by representatives from ministries, CPSCs, think tanks, academia, and the steel industry itself, have been instrumental in producing this comprehensive document. In conclusion, I am firm that this report will provide the strategic foundation needed to achieve an environmentally sustainable and economically inclusive future. Together, through collective efforts and decisive action, we can ensure the long-term competitiveness and resilience of the Indian steel industry while meeting the demand of a greener and more sustainable world. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for the insightful introduction. Your words have set the stage for a productive and informative event. To delve deeper into this groundbreaking initiative, its journey and key findings, requesting Srimati Neha Verma, IFS batch, Uttarakhand Cadre 2005, alumna of IIT Kanpur and IIM Bangalore, presently serving as Director, Energy and Climate Change, Ministry of Steel, to please come and enlighten our audience with her insights via presentation.
Good morning, everyone. A warm welcome to everyone to this event, which marks the culmination of our efforts on working towards decarbonization of steel sector. I'll be just giving a very brief overview of what this report, which is going to be released today, holds. Aligning with Honorable PM's 2030 Glasgow commitments and 2070 net zero goals, while trying to balance our ambitious growth targets of 2030 and 2047, also while circumventing the constraints of our legacy capacity up to 2040, as steel plants are long lived, they are capital intensive with long term technology lock in and hence having high emission inertia lock in. Ministry of Steel has already embarked on the journey of decarbonization. Just to give a landscape scenario of the steel industry of India vis-a-vis the world, as you all know, Indian steel sector is the first largest producer of DRI, second largest producer of crude steel and consumer of finished steel, has fifth highest iron reserves, and has been showing 7% CAGR since 2004, while having 7.4% share in global steel production. But this is also the fact that when we compare the emissions, world steel industry contributes about 8% of emissions, while Indian is at 10 to 12%. Average emission intensity of world is 1.91 tons of CO2 per ton of crude steel, while Indian is 2.54. And the reasons are many. One of them is the scrap usage. It's 31% on an average in the globe, while in India it's only 21%. Natural gas is easily available at a cheaper cost. However, it's a much different scenario in India. Quality of iron ore across the world at many places where the emission intensity is low is high, while India is dealing with a low quality iron ore. And emission intensity of the grid is lower in Western countries, while in India it's quite high. So these are the factors which actually contribute towards a higher emission intensity. And if we just look at this graphic, it just shows that how our intensities are distributed across different production routes. We have highest emission intensity for coal-based DRI, electric arc furnace or induction furnace route. Then we have blast furnace. Natural gas-based route shows almost half the emission intensity. 100% scrap rate route is almost negligible emission intensity, while hydrogen-based DRI, electric arc furnace production, takes us to near zero emissions. And this is also reflected in the fact the high emissions are also reflected in the fact that how our productions are distributed across the various metallic inputs. Across the world, as we've seen, 31% of the steel has scrap as an input, and 63% has hot metal as the input, and 6% is DRI, which is all only natural gas. And if we look at the India donut, if you see the dark gray colors band, it is 23% of Indian steel is based on coal-based DRI, of which you can correlate with the left-hand side graphic that it is the highest emission intensity producing production route. So this is why our emission intensity is high, and this is what drives us towards forming our strategy towards decarbonization. While talking about Government of India initiatives, there have been a lot of work being done since 2012 when the PAT scheme came. We have worked with NITO, Japan, and UNDP for improving energy efficiency in steel sector. Various policies like National Steel Policy, domestically manufactured iron and steel products policy, steel scrap policy, vehicle recycling policy, etc., vehicle scrapping policy, etc., have been working towards this end. And while the recently launched National Green Hydrogen Mission as well as CCTS scheme shows us a really definite pathway towards decarbonization. I would say in Ministry of Steel also took very concrete step while constituting 14 task forces last year. These task forces covered the whole gamut of decarbonization levers, which can be broadly divided into demand side drivers, supply side push, as well as key enablers. Looking at demand side drivers, one of the very important factor for driving green steel production is developing taxonomy of green steel. Nowhere in the world green steel is defined, and neither so in India. Unless we know what is green steel, how are we going to produce it? How are we going to finance it? How are we going to market it? So this is the question, a pertinent question, which ministry is committed to solve this puzzle. Monitoring CO2 emissions is very important, because unless we have a set MRE mechanism, how do we benchmark our current emissions, as well as how do we know how we are progressing? Demand generation, again, is equally important policy lever, because unless we create a market for green steel at a higher premium, producers may not find the right nudge to produce green steel. So these are the policy accelerators which ministry is already working on. For the supply side push, energy efficiency and renewable energy have been considered as low hanging fruit, because the technology is already there. We just have to increase the penetration through infusion of finances, as well as developing the right ecosystem and having some policy interventions. So these are the sprints which can take us towards 2030 carbon reduction goals. Process transition from coal-based DRI to gas-based DRI is extremely important. As you have seen, 23% of our production depends on coal DRI. We want to make our industry gas ready. Right now, be it natural gas, be it syngas, or be it hydrogen. So, but the idea is to move from rotary kilns to vertical shaft. Material efficiency encompasses beneficiation, palletization, and increased usage of scrap. Green hydrogen, as you all know, is very, very important lever, as it has a potential to reduce the carbon emission to near zero. CCUS is again very important for the steel industry, because it has been found through our work that at least 50% of emissions cannot be abated in the steel sector without the use of CCUS, given our current production routes. Biochar is also emerging as a new field where it can replace fossil fuel-based coal. Key enablers include R&D, finance, international focus, and skill development. So, ladies and gentlemen, these are the 14 levers on which ministry has been working with the help of the task forces. We have done comprehensive analysis of all these factors. We have tried to figure out what is the intent scenario, what are the global best practices, what are the challenges we face, and what is the way forward to deal with all of these. And this is what is presented in the report, which we are going to release very soon. While going through this analysis, rigorous deliberations, we figured out the constraints for green steel transition can be divided into 4 buckets of resources, policy, technology, and finance. In resources, we've already seen that low-grade iron ore and coal, low availability of natural gas, low availability of scrap, low grid intensity, and low land availability for RE plants are the constraints. In policy, green steel is not defined. There is no baseline established for emissions yet. No incentive for steel producers to produce low carbon emission steel. And then there are variable policies across different states for RE. Technology, we have seen it's steel industry, a long-term technology lock-in sector. Use of 100% green hydrogen is not established commercially yet anywhere in the world. CCUS, that is carbon capture, utilization, and storage technology, is also not fully matured. CCS potential, that is carbon capture and storage potential, which can take us there, is not established yet in India. Lack of adequate investment in R&D and lack of access to round-the-clock RE, as well as alternate routes of low emission steel making like molten oxide electrolysis, etc., are at low TRL. Finance, we are very capital intensive industry. Cost of green hydrogen is very prohibitive. We have a huge appetite of using hydrogen in blending in blast furnaces as well as gas-based DRI, but it's the economics which doesn't work out. Again, CCUS cost is very, very high. Energy efficiency measures also have entail initial capital cost, although in long run, ROI may be negative, but initially maybe positive, but initially there's a high cost. Then high capital investment for captive RE plants, high cost of beneficiation, and of course, the limited availability of green finance are the issues. Ministry of Steel has identified various strategies for transition of the steel sector, and they can be grouped into One is low hanging fruit. What we are targeting is 2030. If we just focus on energy efficiency and renewable energy, we would be easily able to meet at least 12% reduction in the steel sector. Transition to alternate fuels need a concentrated focus, natural gas, green hydrogen, biochar, and also we considered recycled carbon dioxide converted into CO as another potential fuel. Cluster-based approach is more important for SSI industries, secondary steel industries, and hydrogen, biochar, CCS, and syngas are where this approach would greatly benefit. We're also looking at aggregator models for aggregating steel demand, renewable energy demand, natural gas demand, and aggregated finance for SSI. We definitely need different sectoral approaches for SSIs and ISP, and there's a lot more work to be done in R&D. Looking at pathway for net zero transition in India, in short term, our main focus is on energy efficiency, renewable energy, for which I said technology is already there. Maximizing the use of pellet, of course, after beneficiation, and increase use of scrap. So by this, we definitely be able to meet our 2030 short-term targets. Green hydrogen and CCS as well as biochar are very important, but what we are envisioning is that we will be working for pilots till 2030 in these fields, but actual emission reduction through these technologies will come in medium term till 2047. And beyond 2047, we definitely have to look at alternate routes of steel making, like molten oxide electrolysis, or there might be something more which is there yet to come. So this is the emission intensity trajectory for the steel sector as has been worked out together with BEE, Bureau of Energy Efficiency, under CCTS scheme. So we are right now at 2.454, and it is emphasized that by 2030, we would be about 13.4% down to 2.20. So this is how the emission trajectory will look for the steel sector. And we can be, and this target is very easy to meet, and I am sure we will overshoot this target. The major targets for decarbonization of steel sector have already been defined in the roadmap in this report, and I'll just skip this. So this is the final roadmap for net zero transition in India, as has been outlined in the report. We are moving slowly by developing policy enablers towards low-hanging fruits, and then we will be focusing on pilots of these technologies which are not fully commercially matured yet, like CCUS, green hydrogen, biochar, and then looking towards full-fledged plants running through these technologies. So, ladies and gentlemen, what we present here is in this report is just the beginning of our journey. We still have a long and winding road in front of us. I'm sure with the help of all the stakeholders present in this room, we should be able to meet our targets and fulfill our climate commitments. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am, for the fantastic and informative presentation. We are truly inspired by the initiatives taken by the ministry. We will now dive into a thought-provoking technical session on leadership and innovation, driving the green steel transition. I'm honored to welcome our esteemed session chair, Shri Sanjay Singh, former Secretary of Steel, to the stage. Sir's extensive experience and insights will undoubtedly steer our discussions towards valuable conclusions. Sir, requesting to please come on the stage. Our technical session today brings a distinguished panel of industry leaders and experts who will explore the critical role of visionary leadership and innovative practices in shaping a sustainable steel future. Please join me with a round of applause in welcoming our esteemed panel and session chair, Shri Sanjay Singh, former Secretary of Steel, Dr. Anshu Bharadwaj, Project Director, Niti Aayog, Shri Abhay Bakre, Mission Director, National Green Hydrogen Mission, Shri Arvind K. Singh, Director, Technical Sale, Shri Saurabh Kundu, Chief Sustainable Officer, Tata Steel; Shri Prabodha Acharya, Chief Sustainable Officer, JSW; Shri Vaibhav Pokarna, Senior Lead Sustainability, AMNS; and our esteemed moderator, Shri Dhruva Purkayastha, Director, CEW. A little about our moderator. Prior to joining, Dhruva sir has served as the Indian Director for Climate Policy Initiative, CPI. Currently, he chairs the Climate Finance Committee at the International Finance Services Centers Authority. Requesting panelists to please take their seats. Sir, the stage is yours. Requesting to please introduce our session chair and panelists and lead us through the insightful discussion. A round of applause, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning and welcome to you all. Just coming in with the session and the presentation that Director Neha Verma made. This is a point of a momentous transition of Indian steel industry. Just to start off the session, let me just introduce the panelists we have in the order. We have with us Mr. Saurav Kundu, Chief Sustainability Officer, Tata Steel. Then we have Mr. Vaibhav Pokarna, Senior Sustainability Lead with ArcelorMittal Nippon Steel. Correct me if I'm going wrong. Then we have Mr. Prabodha Acharya, Chief Sustainability Officer, JSW. Then we have the chair of our session, Sri Sanjay Singh, former Secretary of Steel Ministry. Then we have Mr. Abhay Bakre, who is currently the Mission Director of NGHM. Am I right, sir? Yeah. Mr. Anshu Bhaldwaj, Director with Niti Aayog. And then we have Director Technical Sale, Director Technical Sale, Mr. Singh, right? Sorry, the names are not placed in order. Okay. Then we have we covered all? Probably. Yeah, Mr. Arvind Kumar Singh, right? Thank you. Okay. Good morning, and let me just start, sir, Mr. Sanjay Singh, if I may just request you to start off this or kick off this discussion with giving us, following the presentation, giving us an overarching view on an approach to greening steel industry in India and sort of possible policy levers that one could think of at this stage, because as I was looking through the presentation, all of it appeared as constraints to the Indian steel industry's transition. So how can we start off this journey towards a low carbon transition in steel industry in India? Thank you, sir. Over to you. Sure. Yeah, please.
Sandeep Porandik ji, Secretary, Ministry of Steel. Eminent panelist, ladies and gentlemen, sabko namaskar. After Neha's so detailed and incisive presentation, there is not much remains for us to really speak about what needs to be done in green steel. But she only enumerated the problems and a detailed plan. I'm a firm believer in that plan is only words on paper. We need monitoring strategy, we need execution mindset, and also entire wherewithal to really implement it. And in fact, what I can say that right now, Indian steel industry, or all of us here, we
are burdened with two kinds of mindsets. First is that we are not responsible for emission. So why we should really be decarbonizing? Number two, steel sector, I mean, as it stands today, is consumer driven, consumption driven. Our export is around only 5 to 6%. Do we really need to care about it? There's all kind of trade barriers in the form of tariff and non-tariff are already in place. CBAMs and several other of the similar kind are going to be put in place. But what I would say that now climate change is for real. This year we have seen in Delhi, although the threshold of 1.5 degrees centigrade, which has been laid down by in Paris Convention, we have reached 1.2 degree, but we saw what Delhi suffered during and entire world suffered. In point is Saudi Arabia, 1,300 people died during Hajj because of extreme temperature. Delhi recorded in the month of June highest ever rainfall, and before that highest ever temperature 52 degrees centigrade. And this is 1.2 degrees centigrade. If in the same manner our carbonization, I'll say that, not decarbonization, keeps on happening, we would reach 2.5 degrees centigrade temperature rise before the end of this century. So that's the kind of problem we are in. And regarding steel, of course, having been in this sector for now a couple of years, I can say that whether they have been really, I'll say, full throttle efforts towards greening the sector. There are technologies which are available. There are the ecosystem is now being created with the help of the government. I mean, we have a mission director of green hydrogen, and there is a carbon credit uh, space which has also been created. So now all these levers are already in place. But despite that, steel sector is very, very hard to abate. And that's why it has been labeled as hard to abate sector in terms of decarbonization. Problem is that around 50% of our steel making is through blast furnace. 33% is through coal-based DRI. I mean, these two are the emitting channels of the carbon dioxide. And we are emitting 12% of carbon dioxide. And by 2030, it will be 14% if we go on in the same manner. And to me, it doesn't look like, although Neha is very optimistic about it, that we would reduce carbon emission, but much more effort is required in terms of really combating greenhouse gas emission, which is happening. Because greenhouse gas emission or all these problems of climate change what we are facing are because of carbon dioxide. 3/4 is because of carbon dioxide, and we are 14% are going to be in time to come. So what to do? Neha has spelled out several such steps which need to be followed. But to me, the most important is, in terms of priority, I'll say the demand creation. So how we can create demand? It is going to be, in this, the government has to play a very, very important role. And rightly, that's the reason why this green steel policy has been formulated. And it is going to be in terms of what I can, I understand, through two kind of channels. One is going to be reservation of creation of market in the form of reservation of a green steel related procurement in the government. Second is going to be incentivizing it. So both these things will have to happen in the same in one go. And more important than that is that we like for instance, as complex is the riddle of green steel, the same complexity is there in the steel sector as such. All kinds of players are there. There are bigger players who have already embarked on the on decarbonization pathway, and there are smaller ones where the problem is immense. And they are the one who required handholding. They are the one who required support of the kind. Capital is required, technology is required, and all other kinds of facilitation would be required for the smaller players. And the first step is that how to reduce the coal-based DRI. But I'll say that smaller ones are in a better advantage because blast furnaces are not going to be replaced in near future. Smaller ones are based on electric arc furnaces. So electric arc furnaces, only the change required is the substitution of fuel. And substitution of fuel, I mean, as we are discussing today, slowly, ultimately it'll go on to green hydrogen. But before that, there are certain other certain other levers which will have to fit in. So number one, what I'll say on the policy front, number one is demand creation. Number two is technology support. Technology support will have to be through collaborations. All the stakeholders, this is such a mammoth thing, all the stakeholders have to come together. And whether it's government, private, academia, R&D institutions, everybody has to come together. And so this kind of a collaboration will have to be created, and that is going to make a difference. And the thrust will have to be on R&D. There is immense power in R&D. This is an era which we are living in, is a technology driven economic growth we are witnessing, and disruptive technologies are coming every now and then. So this is Mr. Bhakrej is here. I mean, recently I came across a very important novel kind of a technology which has been developed by University of Belgium, Sil Hydro, where a solar panel will be able to generate green hydrogen, taking water from atmosphere and uh, power from solar. So through that, they have done they are doing R&D. Of course, a lot of the works is required to be done, and several of these efforts which are happening in the R&D world, they have not seen the gone on to be deployed anywhere. So let's wait and watch. But there is a lot of work which is going on in this area, and the reason is, of course, obvious, that now our existence is threatened if we don't really take a very positive step. With these words, as of now, I'll just take my seat. Thank you.
Th- Thank you, Mr. Sanjay Singh. Thanks you for kind of opening this out with demand creation, incentives, public procurement, and technology. Now, with this, let me just turn over to Dr. Anshu Bhardwaj. Anshu, given that what we are seeing here, this is hard to abate, and we are faced with a situation where greening is a lot constrained because of not really the industry, but the inputs that process that gets into it, right? I mean, in the sense, whether you have beneficiation, pelletization, quality of coal, quality of cement, steel, hematite content. The point that I request you to kind of focus on a couple of things. One, uh, Shri Sanjay Singh mentioned on incentives. Now, at some level, there is green public procurement. At some level, you need to set standards. What is it that can be done to incentivize the industry from a, I would say, policy goal point of view? What are the incentives possible? And just before you start, Anshu, given the constraints of time, on my first response, I would request all of you to limit your response to 5 minutes, and we might have a rollover questions. Anshu, over to you.
Dignitaries on the dais, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to all of you. I congratulate Ministry of Steel for this very nice work in releasing the 14 reports. It's a truly landmark work. All congratulations to you. Dhruva, to your point, just to the kind of question which you raised, that's exactly what we also in NITI are currently exploring. We have undertaken a detailed study on India's path to net zero. It's a quite comprehensive exercise in which we are working very closely with Ministry of Steel and all the line ministries. The key question there is, given India's developmental goals for 2047 and beyond to become a 30 trillion economy, how do we simultaneously decarbonize and achieve the climate goals? So it's a pretty ambitious ask. So on the one hand, achieving developmental goals of becoming a 30 trillion economy and beyond, at the same time becoming a net GHG zero emitter by 2070. Clearly, the report is still, we are still working on the report in discussion with all the ministries. However, steel and cement have emerged as two very important sectors. One, because from the point of view for future GDP, these are very important contributors. The manufacturing share, industry share, which is around 30%, is likely to remain the same going forward. And so contribution of steel, cement to GDP is very important. At the same time, their share to emissions is also very significant. As Sanjay sir mentioned, the current 10% of steel is likely to increase. Now, in the presentation which Director Steel gave in the beginning, which is a very comprehensive presentation, she talked about various interventions which can be made in this sector. Now, the next question is how, which I would urge the ministry to deliberate upon. For example, what has worked in this sector in the past is schemes such as PAT scheme, which were market-based interventions, which did not require any support from the government in terms of incentives. That was market-driven. The CCTS, which is now being implemented, again is a novel market-based intervention which will require trading between the steel plants for achieving carbon goals. As the report highlights, that will take us to a point which is a theoretical limit on specific energy consumption. To go beyond that, we will be getting into new technologies such as green hydrogen, such as CCUS, which will require incentives and policy support from the government to take it forward. So I think we are at a point where a serious thought needs to be given on how to move the industries in a direction on net zero path with any incentives and policy support from the government. So that's very briefly to answer your question. I'll stick to my 5 minutes. We'll just leave a thought that we would be very happy to support the ministry from NITI in these initiatives, and happy to take up any studies of relevance to the ministry. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. So let me just shift to this issue. Thanks for the need for incentives, which is okay. So we deal with energy efficiency, and all of these are low-hanging fruit at some level. We'll need to come to process emissions, and that's where, sir, Mr. Abhay Bakri, you come in terms of national hydrogen mission for sure, and also with your previous hat on, how do you link this to with the carbon markets? So my question for you is something like this. I mean, what is the feasibility that you see for hydrogen actually working both for, let me call it, both for heating and also as a reducing agent? Because there are these two functions which will put the green steel in pathway, and how far is it realistic, and what is it that the mission can support the industry to adopt it? And second is, if you could throw some light on how this linkages could be possible with both the national compliance market, particularly on the compliance market, as to how do we kind of link the two. Thank you. You can feel free whichever way you want to do that.
Thank you. And let me, again, for the sake of repetition, congratulate it for this wonderful report. This was much awaited, and
by the industry, and full marks to the team from Ministry of Steel. I remember almost 1.5 years back when Steel Ministry's officials, Additional Secretary JS and directors, how do we have actually the green steel industry in the India? So, and this is the point today, that we have a report, and there are many more in sectors like cement, fertilizer, who are waiting actually to get these kind of analysis and the recommendations done. So let me start with the very simple thing, that energy efficiency and decarbonization, these strategies have actually gained importance. When we had this Paris Agreement, we had 33% target. So the low-hanging fruits, basically the energy efficiency was leveraged. And there is simple principle. Those sectors which grow faster or which have a higher growth are going to have better interventions, both in terms of efficiency improvement or decarbonization. Or in other way, those sectors we have a faster rate of decarbonization, which have a higher growth. Let's say a very simple example of solar. We have done it because the electricity demand was growing very fast. The solar penetration, which started from 18 rupees per unit somewhere in 2011, 2012, and today in fact, we touched something around 2 and 2.5. It has happened only within a period of 10 or 12 years. Same thing we have seen now, EV. EV came much faster than what we thought in 2017. And I'm sure now this is going to happen both for the green steel or for the decarbonization. It will also happen for the green hydrogen. The hydrogen will come much faster than what we think, only because there are various sectors in the demand side who are growing at a faster rate. Now, coming back to the specific questions, this report itself, in fact, I have personally attended at least 20 meetings of different task force while preparing this report. What we found that we need to give two kind of options. One, for the industry to have the flexibility. In the presentation, there was a simple graph from 2.54 to 2.2. And this graph was at least debated for 6 meetings within the sectors, within the industry, within Ministry of Power, Ministry of Environment. And of course, the 6 meetings happened because most of the people did not agree for this graph. And this graph was prepared considering the fact that as and more we are going to shift from our production, say between 140, 150 tons per year to something around 270, 280 or even 300 metric tons per year by 2030 or by 2032, we are going to add up more efficient steel, more greener steel, and more cleaner fuels uses by 2030. This we have seen in all the sectors of PAT in the first decade. And in fact, as I say, the first stage from Paris to Glasgow was actually the low-hanging fruit for energy efficiency. And once the Glasgow has come, we are moving from energy efficiency to energy transition, which is basically giving a flexibility to the demand industries, either to improve efficiency or switch to a cleaner fuel. And that's why we call it energy transition. Now, both this flexibility is available for this particular graph. We are expecting at least 30 to 40% reduction from 2.54 in terms of intensity, and then further 60% from mid path of say 2027 up to 2030-31. Now, this graph has been meticulously worked out from different technologies, from different demand scenarios, etc. So it's not a simple graph, but actually going to shape up the entire green steel industry. As you rightly said, we have the PAT scheme, which is actually getting transformed into CCTS, which is the compliance market. At the same time, when this benefit will be available in terms of CCTS as a carbon credits. So the industry will have a choice. They want to improve the efficiency, they want to reduce the emissions by 10%, by 12%, or by 15%. It's their decision because it will vary from each process, each technology, each industry, depending on the vintage, etc. So these flexibility is actually available with the supplier. And the last point is that how should we actually incentivize in terms of CCTS? The best example is, again, if I go back to the solar revolution, if we incentivize on the supply side and keep the prices of the commodity or the output or the services at par with the otherwise settled technology, This is a better strategy. Of course, it will vary from rather than incentivizing on the demand side, because demand side today there will be a difficult decision for a purchaser to ignore a steel of 50,000 per metric ton per ton to rather than 80,000 rupees per ton. Same thing is for ammonia. If the ammonia is available something in 55,000 per ton to as against the green ammonia, which will be say 80,000 or 75,000, the purchaser will have it. If we give incentive on the supply side to try to match the product cost itself very close to what is available otherwise in a gray side, and then bridge that gap through carbon credits. That's a much better strategy, not immediately in 2-3 years. It has to be a gradual penetration, 2%, 5%, 10%, like that. And slowly the complete sector will start having the a larger share. And what we have seen, by 2016-17, the solar prices came at par with the normal power side, and then the incentives are not required at the supply side. So this strategy, I believe, for a growing economy like India, in most of the sectors, will work much better based on the prior experience. Thank you so much.
No, thank you, Mr. Bhagra. There's an interesting point. Incentivize the supply side, the demand side find it a problem to procure if the prices are not matched. That's an interesting point, but demand generation needs to happen. Let me, before I turn to private sector, Mr. Singh, Mr. Arvind Singh, could you enlighten us, or could you kind of give us some idea of how SAIL is dealing with, I would say, greening of steel industry amongst its plants? Some initiatives which SAIL is taking. And could you kindly limit to 5 minutes, please?
Paramadharniye, Secretary, Steel, senior officials from Ministry of Steels and steel sectors. Today, whatever we are deciding, that is not for today. We are deciding how we have to hand over the future to our great grandchildren. That is the point we are discussing today. Coming to the SAIL, being the one of the oldest steel maker of the nation, we have the double challenge. Because whatever the technology and equipment today we are having, that we have started in 60s and 70s. If you see, today we are operating around 18 blast furnaces. Most of them, around more than 50%, are operating since 16 and 17, having the old technology. So we are working on the two fronts. One is upgrading the old equipment, swapping the capacity, either by upgrading or closing the blast furnaces. This is the number one. For that, we have decided that in some blast furnaces which cannot be upgraded, that we have decided we will shut down the blast furnace, and we have the new blast furnaces having the higher capacity with the latest, best available technology, which will be future ready. That means that if future technology comes of the hydrogen injections and whatever the technology we have discussed earlier, that equipment will be ready for that. This is the number one part. Second part is, we are also expanding our capacity by almost 50 to 60%, from 20 million ton to 30 plus million ton by 2035. In that area, we are discussing with all technology providers. Whatever the technology you will give me today, that will be latest available technology, best available technology today, and it will be ready for the future technology availability to take care. This is the two parts we are working. In addition of that, we are also having the collaboration with the premier research institute and technology providers to have the best available technology today, so that we can introduce those technology in our blast furnaces. For example, we are having a discussion with one of the technology provider for injection of the coke oven gas in the blast furnace. which is having more than 50% of hydrogen. This is the one area that will reduce the cost of the coal by reducing the coke rate. Sir, we all know that if you want to reduce the CO2 emissions, we have to first attack the reduction of the coke rate, and that comes from the blast furnaces. So that is the one area where we are working. Another area that we are doing the experiments with the available technology suppliers. We are having the MOU with the IIT Mumbai also. In one of the plant, we are having the MOU with the IIT Mumbai for carbon capture and utilization in the CBM belt that is available in the Burnpur. If that becomes successful in the coming futures, then it will be a breakthrough technology for the carbon capture and utilizations. Another a small initiative which we are working is use of the biochar in sinter making, injecting the biochar along with the PCI in the blast furnace. These are the initiatives which will reduce the CO2 emission to a great extent in the coming future. Sir, I assure on the behalf of SAIL that we are committed to achieve the net zero by 2070. And in spite of the being the one of the oldest steel maker of the country, we are on the right track to achieve the carbon emissions less than 2.2 by 2030. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Arvind Singh. Great points on recycling, coke oven gas. Great points on saying ultimately you'll have to attack the reducing agent and focusing on CCUS too. Let me just turn to Dr. Saurav Kundu. Dr. Kundu, before I get to the specific question, which there are some uncertainties around how do you define green steel technically? Are you talking of emissions? Are you talking of quantity of scrap? Or are you talking of process? Is there a standardization available, possible? And let me follow on with the second one so that I don't come in between again. Between the range of decarbonization levers that this 470-page report has thrown up, in terms of saying there's a huge range, and what we saw in the presentation from a low-hanging fruit of energy efficiency to the other spectrum of green hydrogen injection to CCS and US. Now, in this range, which would you think would gradually become more technically feasible? So these are my two parts of it. Please feel free whichever way you want to kind of take them on.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So, to answer the first part of the question, which is about defining green steel, the way it is being done now, in the world, you don't see any definition of green steel. Okay, no one has a definitely said that, okay, this is what we should call a green steel. Now, why so? So, if you see that every steel company has taken a target to reach net zero, but their trajectory to reach net zero is different. And it is different, it has to be different because different parts of the world is taking it differently. The resources are different, the technological space or the background is different. So they have to follow a trajectory which is different. Not only that, for even a very developed economy, the trajectory for decarbonization is non-linear. So under such circumstances, defining green steel is going to be very difficult. And if it is another opinion that I would also like to tell all of you is that probably it is the best idea to keep the decarbonization in the industry as a site, and the decarbonization of the product are two different different things, and we can keep it separate.
Between. Now, what you're saying is aligns with what Mr. kind of Bakre indicated to in some ways of saying it is the process, do not define the green from an end product point of view. Am I getting you right?
Yeah.
If I'm getting you right, then comes the question of how is public procurement of green steel going to be possible? So, and that brings me to a conflict there. Sorry to intervene. Yeah.
So of course, the debate is going on, and if you see how Europe works in this, okay, so the public procurement there depends a lot on the environment product declaration. That means the carbon which is declared as far as the grade of steel is concerned. It does not depend on what is that company or that organization is emitting as a whole. So if you go there, then there is also an opportunity to include other life cycle indicators. For instance, at the end of the day, sustainability is important. So, and sustainability is not only GHG, but it is also about, how much water we are using, how much space, how much depletion in the ozone layer we are creating. And all these are already there in the EPDs that we have. In fact, Indian steel companies are also doing it. We also, with Tata Steel, we have EPDs, JSW has, AMNS has. So if we can actually use it intelligently, then it would be possible for us to come up with a strategy for green procurement. And I think that might be the way to go.
Please carry on. Please carry on.
I think the last part of your
second part was what technologies appears to you to be feasible today as you look into the future?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. Actually, I was also thinking of mentioning that. So I think there are three buckets, okay, till 2030. So first bucket is to see that how to utilize the waste heat or the waste energy, okay? A lot of energy is actually getting wasted in a steel plant, apart from steel plant, any other industry, but also in the steel plant. And if you divide that waste energy into three buckets, which is the low temperature bucket, medium temperature bucket, and high temperature bucket, there is technology available. Technology is providers are there in India where we can utilize the low temperature heats. For instance, organic Rankine cycle, we can easily use it. And any industry, not only the integrated steel plants, but also the smaller steel plants, MSMEs can also use it. For the medium and the high temperature energy, of course, technology intervention is required, which we saw that one of the levers will be R&D. So that's number one. Number two interesting thing is, in order to do this quickly, every steel, we talk about that the gas is not available, right? Hydrogen is, of course, it will come slowly. NG is also a problem. But every steel plant has a lot of gas, waste gas, or the byproduct gas, I must say, within it. And that byproduct gas, just an example, if a steel plant has 10 million ton production through BF route, through the byproduct gases, it can produce another 1.5 million ton of DRI. And that 1.5 million ton DRI is not only increasing your production, but also reducing the carbon emission by at least 15%. So this can also be explored. Only last one point, and that is also especially for the MSMEs are also important. We have carbon in front of us. Okay, the carbon is in the form of green, which is biomass. And if we can make good use of it, I think the coal-based DRI can replace at least 60% of the coal with the lumpy biomass. And of course, it can also be used to replace the PCI coal, which can reduce CO2 in immediate future to a great extent. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kundu. Thank you. We'll come back, if time permits. Shri Prabodhacharya, now coming back to you on, well, I have to ask you economics of these technologies now and the financing. And we have been a part of the same transition finance committee with the Ministry of Finance and IFSCA. So we have seen this issue of not being able to finance because they are not commercially viable. The outputs are costlier. The banker doesn't tend to finance. We are both very much aware of these issues. So while all this roadmap looks great, industry needs to be financed by the banking system. And therefore, which of these look to be commercially feasible, economically viable? Over to you, sir.
Working now. This is working. Okay. I wanted to save time not to go to dais. Thank you. Thank you, Dhruv, for the question. But let me start with a statement. Indian steel industry is a very responsible business sector for two reasons. We all know it supports the growth of the nations, but most importantly, it is also supporting the decarbonizations for both mitigation and adaptations. One clarification I want to point, the projections now everywhere I listen, India steel sector is contributing 12% to the total nation's emission. I think we need to correct it. It is only 12% of direct energy related emissions. Just for corrections, just we are all in the same page. It's not total India's emission, 12%.
12% of energy related emissions.
Energy related emissions. So that's we need to all correct, and all need to come to the same point. Financing is very important. We all understand. We all are in the industry is in a business. Although their greater goal is to support the nation's economic growth, obviously they also need to grow. So any technology choices has to be prudent in the sense that the capital market accepts your transitions. And therefore, it is very essential we define what a transition looks like. We all saw 2.5 to 2.2 is a transition plan. But what is the transition looks like in terms of technology? Because that's very important when we engage with the capital market. And the transition technology cannot be same for India as you see in Europe, US, or rest of the part of the world. We need to recognize this fact. And that is where I sincerely believe, if you look at the fundamentals, steel cannot be made without carbon, right? Steel is, because it's called carbon steel. We are carbon for the strength, required strength. So the question is, I think I will put in 3 buckets. Can we produce more steel with same carbon? That's all your efficiency bucket, all your technology improvement buckets, right? The second part has to be, can we produce steel with less carbon input? That is the transition, right? We are a net importer of coking coal. Can I maintain that and produce more and more steel? So that is the transition. The third bucket, which we call disruptive technology, is that can we produce steel for the minimum carbon content which is required? Whether you do electrolysis or you recycle the scrap, the minimum carbon content. So the fact is that you cannot produce steel without any carbon emissions. So there will be residual carbon emission. We need to factor in when we plan for our net zero. Now, coming to your question on the transition, how it should look like, I would define what should be the transition technology for India. I believe sincerely that BOF large scale is a transition technology for Indian steel industry. What you see in Europe, thermal getting replaced with the gas looked as a transition fuel. For India, high capacity blast furnace and BOF is a transition technology for steel sector, and that should be encouraged. The question again, we need to educate the capital market that please don't look everything in the same lens. And that can possibly achieve what we are trying to achieve. So it is all about convincing the capital market to get
This brings me to another question for you. Sorry, but another pushing question. Let me push you a little bit. What is in there for a capital market to consider? The capital market considers whether the banker or the capital market. How does it matter to the banker as to transition? What is policy going to do for the banker? Yes, that has to be transitioned. But when you look at commercial financing, you'll produce the same amount of steel at a higher cost and higher capital cost. And therefore, for the banker, it is about saying, why do I need to finance this? I don't understand technology. No one has taught me technology. I consider it risky. So why should I even lend money to it? Unless, of course, coming to that unless part is the answer that I'm looking for you.
No, that is a very good question, Dhruv, in fact. Why a capital? So if I put the question around, why as a business I will be concerned about emission reductions? I need to make money, right, to survive. And that is everybody does, every business. But there is a greater goal. We all must decarbonize and decouple growth from the emissions. And the same valid for capital market. Now, question is, as a capital market, if I am based at Europe, if I am putting in India, do I need to say in the same way if I am sitting in India? Right? That is where he will think, I think your question is towards that.
Yeah.
Shall I put money in the technology which will give me more emissions than I'll put money maybe in US where there is a recycled steel industry, right?
So therefore, you're done. Then I'm kind of closing this because we need to round off.
There the question is that where you get a growth trajectory, you have to remember that Indian steel sector is the only steel sector in the world which is going to grow, right? And this requires capital for the transitions, and that requires, so that is where the carbon budget cannot be same for every region. Equity has to come into play. But before you close, I have one very common point. My appeal to everybody. I keep on hearing this sector as a hard to abate, hard to abate, hard to abate. This is an excuse we are following. Please call the term priority to abate. We all need to abate, reduce these emissions. Stop calling this sector as a hard to abate. At least Indian steel industry is taking a lot of initiative towards prioritizing to abate this sector. Thanks to Ministry of Steel for bringing on such a huge report and a pathway. So this is my appeal to everybody. And now I leave it to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Acharya, for pointing this out. And therefore, as the Ministry of Steel is moving towards the greater public good, you would also need the Ministry of Finance to move to finance and direct that finance to transition of steel. And that's the indication which I read between the lines from you. Yes, that greater public good needs to be addressed also from the financial sector too. Like you talk of green taxonomy, your finance also needs a taxonomy to be kind of flow into those sectors.
Developing transition finance for the
Yes. So I was so kind of little biased between us, but with an objective. Thank you so much. Thank you. Now let me come to Vaibhav Pukarna. If I'm getting your name right, hopefully.
Yeah.
In terms of, since ArcelorMittal, Nippon Steel, I know you have a lot of experience internationally. Now, what my question to you is, now look, Indian steel industry, as Mr. Arvind Singh said, set up in the 60s. We have a dual challenge of adopting technology, shutting down old technologies. What is it that best practices and technology can be transferred from, let's say, ArcelorMittal's experiences internationally? I mean, what is it that Indian steel industry can learn, best practices, technology, and if so, how? Thank you.
So let me answer it in a different way. In fact, it's not like the technologies are not there. Technology is still there. We have the best, the largest gas-based DRI technology in India, AMNS, not ArcelorMittal, but AMNS itself. But coming back to your question, the parent companies, ArcelorMittal and both Nippon Steel, they have got they are very far ahead compared to the industries in India. But it's not like there is something new. The technologies are there. They can be transferred over here. It's not an issue. We already have those technologies. In fact, we are ahead. Madam was saying 2.54 is the average intensity of the sector, and the target for 2030 is 2.2. We are already there. We are even below that level even today in India, AMNS. And we are sure that we will be at par with the world by 2030. So, in terms of technology transfer, it's not a rocket science. It is there. It is available with everybody. The only question which everybody was talking about, and Professor Sir was also talking about, was that financing, the cost. Today we are producing steel at a much higher cost compared to what it is available by the conventional routes. Although it is greener, it is less emission intensive. I would not say greener, less emission intensive, but at a premium. So, and the market is not accepting that. So until unless there is an acceptance from the market, there is an acceptance from the consumer side, there is a push from the regulatory authorities, then only things can move in the right direction. It's not a question about technology. Technology is there. And if push comes to shove, industry will find a way of adopting new technologies. It will not be a problem for them. The only thing which is required is the opportunity and the capitalize that opportunity. That's it.
Thank you, Vaibhav. Thank you. Let me just return to the chair, sir. In terms of what we hear, and let me just kind of move this into something which is pretty much contested in many ways, is the issue of exports and the issue of imposition of carbon content duties, whether it is CBAM in Europe today, potentially CBAM type imposition, IRA in the United States. So how is this affecting us, and what is the expected trajectory here? Does the Indian industry become uncompetitive? It will lose exports? What's the policy action desirable here, or does India fight it out at WTO? Where do we go on all of this? Sorry for this complicated, but this is the policy angle that we need to get to.
A green steel can only sell if it is cheaper or at the same price as brown steel. So what's the way out? Increase cost of brown steel, decrease price of green steel. So that's what so how the cost of brown steel increases through carbon tax. And so that's what it all depends on where it is placed on our agenda. It's the top priority, middle, or somewhere. So, and similarly, I'm of the firm opinion, our Honorable Prime Minister has laid down the target of greening India, becoming net zero by 2070. So entire ecosystem now is falling in place for it to support this kind of a clarion call of Honorable Prime Minister. So now the thing is that all these levers, they are now going to work towards reducing carbon emission. But along with that, you mentioned about trade, CBAM.
Yeah.
Entire steel industry right now, because since we have not embarked on that path, is up in arm against that.
Yeah.
The problem, because now every country in the, I'll say in the international global trade space is playing to their advantage. What is the advantage of Europe? They have scrap. They can produce green steel. They have some demand for green steel as well. And green steel, they are producing. So whatever green steel comes, so it has to be priced at the same level. So with us, in terms of who are exporting to Europe, I mean, our steel export to Europe is around 3% of our entire steel production.
3%. Okay.
Around that is that we are exporting to Europe. So that kind of production, because the kind of processes which have been put in place to follow CBAM, they are very arduous, very difficult to implement. Since it is a new space, that's one reason. So what I'm trying to hint at is ultimately every country is going to be follow the same kind of path. When we are greening our sector, if non-green steel comes into a market, that will be taxed. Within our country, we have already set up our carbon trading infrastructure. So that is what I mean. That is basically premised on the same kind of principle. So so this is going to be something common in time to come.
No, thank you, sir. So carbon markets substituting for carbon tax. Well, 3% probably does not matter much on exports. Is that the direction that we are taking? 3% is a small share. And when you say tax, which means at a flat level, it gets into some kind of a 15% tax if you don't declare content. Now, if you tax the exports, which means it is basically a money which goes into the fisc of India itself rather than paying out that tax to an European country. If that could be taxed from an exports point of view, but I'm assuming you're not are you also talking about putting a carbon tax when the carbon markets is probably trying to play the same role, or kind of a substitution? Sorry, I mean, this just a seeking a clarity on saying, is it tax or is it markets or is it both?
You're talking about India. You're
Yeah.
talking about
First on exports and then on India.
does basically nomenclature is immaterial. If it is playing one kind of, we have a role for tax or whatever is being imposed to play. I mean, that is uh, uh, it becomes a retardant for somebody, for a steel maker to not go on that way. Tax means that. So we have to. It's premised on that. As far as CBAM is concerned, that is quite high, and the kind of price enhancement, the cost enhancement of for Indian steel maker could be on 25%, and that's why some of the steel makers are saying also that why do we need to export to Europe? It's not a very large content. Right. And in fact, right now, I mean, this is a very, very fortunate time for us in terms of when our economy is based on consumption, and our growth is developed based on consumption rather than on exports. And so this kind of transition has happened, and 40% of the steel is being, I'll say 40 million ton of steel is being consumed by the government. So that's the
lever. Yeah. So thanks a lot. We have a short time, but in the last 5 minutes, what I would like each of you to kind of talk about 2 points out of this, starting, as it was said, that this is a starting point of a transition journey in the steel industry. 2 points that you would like to make for all stakeholders to consider. Let me start with Dr. Kundu. Just 2 points, and we'll go around in a circle. And limit it to a minute.
Yeah. Just quickly, in fact, in your question, what you asked me, I want to reiterate that it's a difficult task, but we cannot only talk about very futuristic technologies, very futuristic processes. We have to keep our mind at the present, and as a result, we have to have plans in periods which starts from today, 2030, and then beyond. That is how it should work.
Nothing much to say. In fact, everything is covered by all the speakers over here at the dais. The one thing is that from technology perspective, it's not a constraint. We have to just create the right levers, right demand, right type of environment, both capital, capex as well as opex, and we are good to go. There is no challenge that we cannot overcome.
Thank you. Mr. Acharya, 2 points.
2 points. Okay, thank you. The question here is how we can accelerate transition, and I will tell how the 2 points will accelerate, because we all understand transition is necessary. 2 points in my view. I completely agree with Mr. Singh's opening remark. We need a pull than push. Science tells pull is easier than push. So demand of green steel mandate will definitely give that necessary acceleration to the transition. So that is the first thing we need to do. And when we see that has been proved right in renewable sector, technology acceleration has started after it has mandated. So that's the number one. So if you have to do the mandate, obviously we need a taxonomy. Good that we are working and agreeing on a taxonomy. The second point, what we need, along with the pull, we also little bit of push. Force is necessary for breaking any inertia. So what that push should be, and that is required for accelerating the transition of technology. And that is where you call it transition finance, I call it viability gap funding. We need that finances available to make technology to be accelerated. So this is the 2 points which I will require and mandate that it will accelerate the transition. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sanjay Singh. 2 points which will drive us on a path of.
One thing is that work as usual is not going to take us anywhere.
Great.
So there'll have to be some uh, kind of specific steps in certain directions headed by pushing, taking care of demand. Second is about the technology part. And third, as Mr. Acharya mentioned, is about the investment into this technology. It requires a lot of money. And only then, because a blast furnace would require to be retrofitted, so heavy investment would be required, and that is going to come from somewhere. For the smaller ones, they would not be able to support that, so it again will have to be financed from somewhere. So investment is a very important thing.
Sure. Thanks. Mr. Vakre.
Yeah, thank you. So we need to take steps at least first thing, and good that Ministry of Steel, as part of our hydrogen mission, is definitely considered, and we are proposing to launch a few pilots. Because unless we see the pilot and there is a ground reality of facing the challenges, the kind of cost it comes, other logistics issues. So that's the first point, that we are going to start some projects, pilot projects, which will actually take us where we what we want to really. And second thing, as rightly said, that for renewable also, the demand was created through a purchase obligation, what we know RPO. And I think, as I mentioned, solely 1%, 2%, 5%, that purchase obligation, if it starts, now where it will start, whether it will be state purchase or whether any other purchase, that depends. But this demand has to be created, because whatever it is produced by pilots, someone has to consume it also. So these are the 2 points. Thank you.
Thank you. Anshu.
Thank you, Dhruva. Just two quick points. Point number one, the time to intervene is now. The presentation showed that current steel capacity of 180 is likely to increase to 500 by mid-century. It's a threefold increase. And considering these are all long gestation projects and long life projects, if you have to invest in technology, it is to invest now. Otherwise, we will be investing in legacy technologies. The intensity of drop from 2.5 to 2.2 probably will get there and will overshoot that. But going beyond that will require new technologies backed up by finance. That's point number one. Point number two, some solutions which were discussed in context of steel are relevant to other sectors as well. For example, CCUS is relevant to cement, is relevant to power, and relevant to other sectors as well. So that will require a slightly broader thinking to look at a sort of not just focus on steel alone. Recently, for example, Ministry of Power is coming up with a CCUS mission, which includes components relevant to wherever CCUS will be required.
Thank you. Mr. Arvind Singh. 2 points.
2 points, that the cost of technology at what it is available in the market, that is very important. How much we as steel maker are able to forget our profit or EBITDA or bottom line. That is very important. Suppose for availability of the renewable energy, for 1 million ton of green steel, we need around 2200 megawatt of solar power. Just you can imagine how much huge energy is required for the green steel. And second, the most important part is availability of the skilled manpower. How you will make the green steel if you don't have the skilled manpower? As the report says, out of 8 people, only 7 people are not knowing what is the green steel. So that is the one area where we have to focus as a steel makers, to train our people how to make green steel and what is the green steels. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. This was a great session. Demand creation leads, create demand for green steel. Technology will follow. Technology is available. It needs to be supported by finance, as has been brought out. And finally, there needs to be a will and a change on skills and supported by manpower and capacity building, particularly starting with information. Thank you all so much. It was a great session. Thank you all.
A huge round of applause for our esteemed panel. Panel to please be on stage. We will do the felicitation now. Thank you to our panel for sharing their valuable insights and remarks. Your contributions have undoubtedly enriched our understanding of the critical role of leadership and innovation in driving the green steel transition. Requesting Shri Abhijit Narendra, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Steel, and Shri Vinod K. Tripathi, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Steel, to please come on stage and felicitate this esteemed panel of experts. I'm requesting audience to please keep clapping for this esteemed panel we have on stage. Session Chair, Shri Sanjay Singh, former Secretary of Steel. Thank you, sir, for joining us today. Dr. Anshu Bharadwaj, Project Director, Niti Aayog. Thank you, sir. Shri Abhay Bakre, Mission Director, National Green Hydrogen Mission. Thank you, sir. Shri Arvind K. Singh, Director, Technical, SAIL. Thank you, sir. Dr. Saurabh Kundu, Chief Sustainable Officer, Tata Steel. Thank you, sir. Shri Prabodha Acharya, Chief Sustainable Officer, JSW. Thank you, sir. Shri Weber Pokarna, Senior Lead Sustainability, AMNS. Thank you, sir. And our esteemed moderator, Shri Dhruva Purkayastha, Director, CEEW. A sincere appreciation to our panel and moderator for the skillful guidance to this important session. Thank you so much, sir. May please take your seats. Guests, it is now time for a short break. Please enjoy some refreshments served at the open veranda across the foyer. We also request participants to please get yourself registered for those who have not. We will be joining back by 11:45 as our minister, Honorable Minister, will be here by then. Thank you for your cooperation. 11:45. Applause for Sir for joining us today to this momentous occasion. Welcome back, everyone. Requesting you to please be seated. It is our great privilege to welcome the esteemed chief guest for today, Shri H. Kumaraswamy, Honorable Minister of Steel and Heavy Industries. His presence here today is a true honor for all of us. Requesting Shri Sandeep Pondrik, Secretary Steel, to please welcome our distinguished chief guest on stage. Requesting our usher to please come on stage. Yes. We are truly grateful to have you, sir. Welcome, requesting a formal welcome to our chief guest today. Can we have a huge round of applause for sir? Ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome with a round of applause again for our other dignitaries of the event. Shri Nagendra N. Sinha, former Secretary, Ministry of Steel. Please come on the stage, sir. Shri Amarendu Prakash, Chairman, SAIL. Shri Abhijit Narendra, Joint Secretary, Steel. And Shri V.K. Tripathi, Joint Secretary, Steel. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Let us commence today's special occasion by lighting the lamp, symbolizing auspicious beginnings, good health, and prosperity in abundance. Requesting our esteemed dignitaries on dais to please come and do the honors of lighting the lamp. Shubham karoti kalyanam, arogyam dhana sampada, shatru buddhi vinashaya, deepa jyotir namostute. Deepa jyotir parabrahma, Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. India's steel industry is a vital pillar of our economy. As one of the global leaders in production and consumption, it employs millions and drives our GDP. To ensure its continued success and alignment with nation's climate goals, we will be unveiling sustainable strategies and a comprehensive action plan today. Without any further delay, let me now invite Shri Sandeep Pondrik, Secretary of Ministry of Steel, to please come for the welcome address and context setting. Shri Pondrik has served as the Additional Chief Secretary for Industries in Bihar and held various other government positions. He previously worked in the National Disaster Management Authority and the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas. Can we please have a round of applause?
Honorable Minister of Steel, Government of India, Shri Kumaraswamy ji, dignitaries on the dais, and all participants in this today's important event of releasing of 14 task force reports which Ministry of Steel is organizing today. First of all, let me say that why today's event is important. In the first session, we heard a lot of experts on India's way forward to green steel. And today's event is a landmark event in that direction because today Ministry of Steel has taken the first concrete step. We have been doing a lot of things, but a concrete step on chalking the way forward as to what we will be doing, how we will be doing. As all of you know that in the direction of our Honorable Prime Minister, India is working towards green infrastructure, green economy. And when I heard today's first session, very valuable comments, very interesting discussion, I saw some what would I say, some apprehension that greening the steel industry is a difficult job. And I would just like to put before you two figures. In 2014, when we were talking about renewable energy, which is again a way towards green or green economy or green infrastructure, there were similar apprehensions, similar doubt about whether we will be really moving towards the targets set by the Honorable Prime Minister. And I was looking before coming here today, in 2014, the solar energy capacity in the country was 2821. That's roughly 2800 megawatt. And 2024, it is 87,000 megawatt. So from 2800 to 87,000 in roughly 10 years. Similarly, on the wind side, the figures are from roughly 21,000 to 47,000. So in 10 years' time, India has been able to move what was thought at that time to be an impossible task. It cannot be done. The task which is being led by the government is impossible, but India is moving not only forward, India is achieving those targets or rather exceeding them. So I'm saying these figures because when we talk about green steel, I'm sure that there are the apprehensions or the concern will be addressed by all stakeholders, be it the government, be it the industry, the PSUs or private sector or secondary steel sector. And we will be able to move towards the green steel. I have no doubt about it under the direction of our Prime Minister and the able leadership of our Minister. The ministry will try its best to achieve that, and I'm sure we will be successful. The 14 task force reports, which will be released by the Minister, Honorable Minister today, they are covering almost all aspects of green steel. I was hearing today that what is actually green steel, nobody really, we don't have a standard definition of green steel. And I also heard that there are differences on what is green steel. So that will be, I think, the first task of the ministry to define the green steel before moving forward. But the 14 reports also have a report on taxonomy. So we will move forward from there. What after the report? So today is an event. We will be releasing the reports. But as Mr. Sanjay Singh said, the ex-steel secretary, that this is just a paper or a plan unless it is implemented. Unless we implement or move forward on these reports, it will not be useful. What we are planning right now is that after these reports are released, we will be making a green steel mission, because similar to what the hydrogen mission, which Dr. Bakre is present today. I don't know where he is right now. He was present today. The mission director of hydrogen mission. Similarly, we will be making a green steel mission, which will have components of policy, incentives, and way forward. I was also hearing in the first session about how we can ensure that green steel is made. In my mind, there are only two ways. One is to give incentives in form of, it may be in any form, in form of PLI or in any form, tax breaks, or give disincentives. What was suggested that in form of carbon break. There are only two ways. It has to be an economic solution. There is no other way of incentivizing. It was interesting to see from the private sector that they were focusing a lot on demand creation of green steel. That's a natural thing. Producers will always focus on demand creation, and consumers will always focus on supply push. That's not a surprising thing. I think we would have to balance the two, uh, both demand creation and supply push, so that we have a way forward. I would like to put this whole action plan into a few buckets. First is technology. What will be the right technology? I really liked Mr. Kundu's remark about focusing on the present. We cannot keep waiting that, okay, there will be green hydrogen, there will be some technology, CCUS, something 10 years from now, then we will talk about green steel. We cannot do that. We have to focus on now what we can do today. As Mr. A.K. Singh said from SAIL, that how can we reduce the carbon today? How can we reduce the costs today? It can be in any form. It can be beneficiation to improve the uh, percentage of iron, or in a better technology to reduce carbon, or anything else. But we have to start today. We cannot wait till 2030 or 35 or 40 that, okay, when we will have green hydrogen, then we will move. No. We have to move today with whatever technology we have, and we have to incorporate new technologies as they come. It may be in the form of gas, to whatever availability it is, and then moving to hydrogen. Second, I think, is demand. What we discuss, we have to create demand for green steel. It was suggested that government can have a procurement push for demand, in at least in government contracts. That's one way of incentivizing or creating demand that we will consider during the mission, when we make the mission. The third is the uh, tax or incentives or disincentives. Fourth is renewable energy, using renewable energy in making of steel. While steel making in itself is one way of reducing carbon, if we start using better ways of energy, it may be flue gas optimization, it may be flue gas, using flue gas, or basically reducing the carbon footprint of the fuel we are using. That's another way of uh, greening the steel. Mr. Pokarna, he mentioned that technologies are available. So it sort of supports my contention that we should move today, not wait for the future. And if technologies are available, we just have to create the demand side and the supply side incentives to ensure that technologies are taken up. Obviously, it will increase costs. There's no doubt about it. But then we will have to think about ways to offset that cost impact on the steel making. I think one important thing because today we only heard about from the established ISPs. One important component of this whole ecosystem are the secondary steel manufacturers. We will have to see how can we incentivize them to go for greening the steel. It doesn't matter whether we are thinking about exports or domestic. Ultimately, we have to green the steel for our own sake, not only because we want to increase exports or we want to incentivize exports. We have to see that carbon footprint is reduced in the country. That's the target. And for that, secondary steel will also have to be incorporated, included in our strategy. So with that, I think the today is the starting of the journey towards green steel. Uh, I would also like to mention at this moment that this whole exercise of task forces, creating the task forces, the extensive work which has gone into it, was started in the time of our ex Steel Secretary, Mr. N.N. Sinha, who is sitting here. So I would like to thank him for the work he has done in this. I would also like to thank the chairpersons of the task forces as well as the team members, because a lot of good work, a lot of hard work has gone into it, and the team of Steel Ministry. Uh, and obviously, this has all been possible because of the leadership provided by the Honorable Minister, Steel. So I am sure that with all of this, we will move forward and we will be able to achieve the vision which has been set up by our Prime Minister towards greening the economy by working on our component of green steel. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your valuable perspectives on the future of steel industry. Your guidance and support are invaluable to our efforts to drive sustainable and innovative practices. Ladies and gentlemen, the moment we all have been waiting for has arrived. I'm delighted to announce that we will now be releasing the report Greening Steel Sector in India Roadmap and Action Plan by our Honorable Chief Guest and dignitaries on the dais. Requesting Sir to please come forward and do the honors. Also requesting Neha ji to please help facilitate the report release. Dear audience and sir, this report is a culmination of tireless efforts of chairpersons and members of 14 task forces, as well as unwavering commitment of the nodal officers of the ministry and knowledge partners. Let us express our gratitude with a moment of sustained applause. Thank you everyone. Leveraging the power of technology, the report is now available for download. Please scan the QR code available on the back side of your badge or from the website steel.gov.in to access your copy now. We value all of your input. Please take this opportunity to provide your comments on the report beginning tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, now let us acknowledge the efforts of all experts, organizations who have wholeheartedly contributed to make this initiative a success. It is time to felicitate the task force chairpersons and supporters. And with great pleasure, I request Shri H. Kumaraswamy, Honorable Minister of Steel and Heavy Industry, to please do the honors. Chairperson Shri Saraswati Prasad for the Task Force Developing Taxonomy for Green Steel, to please come on stage. Shri Prasad is a retired IAS officer of 1985 batch, Assam and Meghalaya cadre. He worked as a special secretary and finance advisor in the Ministry of Steel and was also ex-CMD of SAIL. A round of applause for Sir. Thank you, Sir. Next, I invite Shri R.P. Gupta for Task Force Monitoring of Carbon Emission of Steel Plants. On stage, please. Sir is a retired IAS officer of 1987 batch, Gujarat cadre. Has worked as a secretary, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Currently is working as chairman and managing director of SECI, Solar Energy Corporation of India Limited. A round of applause for Sir. Thank you so much, Sir. Next, I invite Dr. Aruna Sharma for Task Force Demand Generation of Green Steel. Madam is a retired IAS officer of 1982 batch, MP cadre. She has worked as Secretary, Ministry of Electronics and IT, and also worked as Secretary, Ministry of Steel. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Next, I invite Shri Ashok Tripathi for Task Force Energy Efficiency. On stage, please. Sir is a retired IAS officer of 1981 batch, Odisha cadre. Currently, he is the Independent Director of Steel Authority of India Limited. A round of applause for our chairpersons who have led this report a success. Thank you, sir. Next, we have Shri Aniruddha Kumar for Task Force Renewable Energy Transition. Requesting sir to please come on stage. Sir is a retired IRS officer of 1987 batch. He has worked as the Additional Secretary at MNRE. Task Force Renewable Energy Transition. A round of applause for sir, please. Thank you, sir. Next, I invite Dr. Parvinder Maini for Task Force Research, Development and Demonstration on stage. Madam is currently serving as Scientific Secretary at the Office of Principal Scientific Advisor to the Government of India. She has served National Center for Medium Range Weather Forecasting, NCMRWF, for close to 2 decades before moving to the Ministry of Earth Scientists. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Next, I invite Shri Ajay Bisaria for the Task Force International Focus. On stage, please. Requesting our audience to please keep clapping. Thank you. Sir is a retired IAF officer. He has worked as the High Commissioner of India to Canada and also India's envoy to Pakistan, Poland, and Lithuania. Task Force International Focus. Thank you, sir. Next, I invite Srimati Sunita Sanghi for the Task Force Skill Development on stage, please. Madam is an officer from the Indian Economic Service 1984 batch. She is a public policy specialist who has worked across various sectors, including agriculture, urban planning, institutional reforms, finance, capital market, education, labor, employment, and skill development. Thank you, ma'am. Next, I invite Dr. Sanak Mishra for Task Force Biochar. Dr. Sanak Mishra is a former president of the Indian National Academy of Engineering, of the Indian Institute of Metals, and a former chairman of the International Organization of Materials, Metals and Minerals Society. He has been the managing director of Rourkela Steel Plant and a full-time member of the board of directors of SAIL. Also later on the board of AM India Limited. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Thank you, audience. Due to some exigencies, following chairpersons of task forces, Dr. Anup K. Pujari for material efficiency, Shri Indu Shekhar Chaturvedi for green hydrogen, Dr. V. K. Saraswat for carbon capture utilization and storage, Dr. Indranil Chittoraj for process transition from coal-based DRI to gas-based DRI, and Shri Sunil Kumar Mehta for finance could not join us in person today. However, their contributions are invaluable. We are fortunate to have their insights and guidance in this report. Moving on, let us keep the applause going as we now call upon the organizations for their invaluable support. Requesting knowledge partner CEEW, Council on Energy, Environment and Water, to please come on stage with their team. I will be now naming the team of CEEW: Deepak Yadav, Hemant Malya, Karan Kothadia, Karthik Shetty, Rishabh Patidar, Rudhi Pradhan, and Sanyukta Satpute. A round of applause for this team. Requesting the team for a group photograph with our esteemed chief guests and dignitaries on dais. We truly acknowledge your effort. Thank you. I next invite the knowledge partner, Terry, the Energy and Resources Institute, Girish Sethi Sir, Soban Babu, Mayank Agarwal, Dr. Manish Kumar Srivastav, Mr. Arupendra Nath Malik, Dr. Souvik Bhattacharya, and Mandavi Singh on the stage. Seems this report is the culmination of best of the brains. Let's keep clapping, everyone. Terry, the Energy and Resources Institute on stage. A group photograph, everybody. Thank you, Team Terry. Now it is time to thank our supporting partner, Shakti Sustainable Energy Foundation, Dr. Sachin Kumar, to please come on stage. A round of applause for Dr. Sachin Kumar. Thank you, sir. And thank you to Shakti Sustainable Energy Foundation. Supporting partners CII, DDG Seema Arora and Rajesh Gopinath to please come on stage. Thank you, CII, for supporting us in this report. A round of applause for CII. Thank you. Thank you so much. Requesting our dignitaries to please take their seats. So, please take their seats. Thank you. Another supporting partner, FICCI, could not join us today. However, we would like to express our sincere gratitude to them for their invaluable contributions to this report. A sincere thanks to our guest for your participation in this momentous occasion. Moving forward, we are fortunate to have experienced leaders with us today. Their wisdom will help steer us towards a brighter future. Inviting Shri Amarendu Prakash, Chairman SAIL, to please come and say a few words. He is a metallurgical engineer from BIT Sindri and has been with SAIL since 1991. Prior to taking charge as the chairman of SAIL, he held the position of director in charge, Bokaro Steel Plant. Shri Amrendru Prakash. A round of applause, please.
Thank you so much. Honorable Minister of Steel, Kumaraswamy Saab, and all members of the steel family. I'm prone to addressing everybody as a family member because steel is one field in which everybody plays a part. And the example of that, as Mr. Singh mentioned during the panel discussion today morning, that our ambition is to ensure that when we hand over this earth, this world, to the next generation, he mentioned grandchildren and great grandchildren, when you hand over this earth to them, in what condition are you going to hand it over to them? And what can be more befitting than we saying that these 14 task forces are being led by guardians of the industry, of the steel industry, coming from so many sectors, coming from international relations, finance, technology, and the bureaucracy, to come together to chart out a pathway as to how we can make sure that this earth is handed over to our grandchildren in the shape in which we had inherited from others. So that's a great effort that has been made by the Steel Ministry. On part of SAIL, I'll just like to mention a few things. Today, again, in the panel discussion, we were talking about supply side, demand side, capital markets, challenges of technology, challenges of trained manpower, everything. Today, I am happy to tell you that today with me, I bring in a team where my director technical is there, supply side, my director commercial is there, demand side, my director finance is there, who handles the money for this, and my director personnel is also here, who will handle the trained manpower. So SAIL will like to look at the whole issue of decarbonization, not just as a business challenge, not just as a business opportunity, but holistically as something that we need to do for this world. One thing that we need to remember is climate change. As mentioned by Sanjay Singh Saab, our ex-secretary, climate change is not something that you can be away from. You cannot say, I'm not part of the steel industry, it does not matter to me. Let the steel industry do whatever they are doing. Because I'm not a steel maker, I can be safe in this world. There is only one world, one earth. And this earth is going to face the consequences. It does not matter whether you make steel in Africa or in US or Europe or India. It is nation agnostic. It is social status agnostic. It does not matter whether you are rich or poor or whatever you are. When this earth is going to suffer, everybody is going to suffer. That is why climate change is a goal which is no longer a business goal. In my company today in SAIL, if you ask me, what are your top 5 business objectives? What is the strategy? Trust me, decarbonization is not there in that study. Because we believe decarbonization is no longer a business challenge or a business priority. Decarbonization is something that is a survival question. A survival question not just for the company, survival question not just for the nation, survival question for the whole world. I mentioned this just to bring to mind the importance of this topic that is facing today. My hats off to all the members of the task forces who have helped us in shaping a pathway. My hats off the steel ministry, which has been so proactive in taking up the topic and ensuring, not waiting for the industry will do it. Often there is a debate. Anything new comes up, people say, let the market forces decide it. Let the industry decide it. We are just there to watch over them, monitor them. Steel ministry has taken up this challenge, created a pathway from the industry side, and many of my colleagues are present today here from the steel industry. We will want to assure the audience and assure dignitaries on the dais, sir, we are committed to making decarbonization happen. It's a complex topic. There are challenges. There will be finances required. Many things will come in. But we are not going to deviate from this path. We are certain that we are going to move forward. In the end, I'll just offer one suggestion, sir. This is something that I'm finding a debate, not just in India, but also abroad, all across the world, in various COP meetings and everywhere. We are debating this. Who is responsible for this pollution and how do we handle it? Who will pay for it? This is a normal question which is getting debated across. I'll just like to float the idea. Can there be a situation when there is only one Earth and we all will face the consequences irrespective of who did research or who did not do research, who invested money, who did not invest the money? Those questions will be useless when this Earth gets suffered and everybody suffers the same. My suggestion would be, can we think of a common R&D platform? I know the government is coming up with schemes. Renewable energy has come up with a scheme for green hydrogen, providing some incentive research. Can all those research, all the knowledge that emanates from that research, can this be available to the whole nation or to the whole world? I'll say open it to the whole world. Anybody can use it. I think that will be the game changer, which will accelerate our push towards a greener world, towards a greener steel industry. So that is just for consideration. We will keep debating this. Nowadays, I was discussing with Steel Secretary Saab that probably in the country every day 10 seminars are happening on green energy. That's the level of awareness and that's the level of concern which is there. Today's panel discussion, and hats off to Dhruvo and all the panelists, was one of the best, sir, that I have heard in last 1 year. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, for your words of wisdom and also opening a debate. Surely we'll have answers in the near future. And it is always an honor to have you with us today. Next, I invite Shri Nagendra N. Sinha, former Secretary, Ministry of Steel, to please come and enlighten the audience. Shri Nagendra Nath Sinha, IAS, was former Secretary, Ministry of Steel. Shri Sinha holds bachelor's degree in electrical engineering from IIT Kanpur and master's in health sciences from USA. Prior to this, Mr. Sinha was holding the charge of Ministry of Rural Development, Government of India. Shri Sinha, a round of applause.
Honorable Minister for Steel and Heavy Industries, Shri H. Kumaraswamy ji, esteemed dignitaries on the dais, off the dais, the esteemed chairpersons of the task forces, and members of the steel fraternity, nay family. Today is indeed a very important day. And I take some bit of pride in seeing this report, the light of the day. It's not merely the report of the task forces, but actually a synthesis of all the wisdom that came from the reports of the various task forces. It's a integrated document that lays down the vision of the steel sector as it should grow today and in future. If you would go to the budget speech of the Honorable Finance Minister, in which she said that we should now move from energy efficiency to the emission targets for hard to abate sectors. And I think it's indeed a very proud day for the steel sector and the steel ministry. And I salute the leadership of the Honorable Minister and the Secretary, Mr. Sandeep Pondrik, that they have brought steel sector as the front running ministry and the sector which has brought out the roadmap. And I think since this report will now be in public domain, so therefore there would be opportunities for member of the steel fraternity as well as those who are not members but indeed are affected and are indeed stakeholders in the entire steel production and consumption process and indeed the entire developmental process to also contribute their valuable thoughts to the entire way in which the steel sector should move from now in future. So I should mention at this moment that steel sector has already done quite a bit of heavy lifting. If one sees the energy saving that came till fifth cycle of the perform, achieve, and trade cycle of the Bureau of Energy Efficiency, it achieved 133% of the target that was laid for it. 24% of the total saving came from the steel sector. And with this roadmap, we should be in a much better position. Now, this report mentions certain facts, and I think I would like to mention them. Since 2005, when we started and we had this number of the carbon emission per unit of the steel produced, the number was somewhere over 3 kg per ton of per kg of crude steel produced. Now this number is somewhere around 2.5, and this number came in about 19 years, and we want to go to a level of 2.2 in about 6 years in 2030. So the scale of progress needs to be accelerated. Many of the steel majors have announced that they want to have zero emission production by 2045 to 2050. So the challenge for them is still bigger, although Indian target is 2070. But I would urge everyone in the steel fraternity to move at a much higher pace. And I think this document would do a great deal of help. We are still quite far away from uh, what is the world's best. If one sees the specific energy consumption of the uh, blast furnace basic oxygen furnace process, Indian level is somewhere around 6 to 6.5 gigacalories per ton of crude steel. The world sees it at 4.5 gigacalories per ton of crude steel produced. And similar numbers are seen for the DRI EAF process as well. So, in order to even catch up with the world, we have to do a lot of work. And in order to reach the levels that are desirable, we have to do still further work. We have certain favorable factors, as was mentioned by Secretary Mr. Pondrik. Renewable energy is one area where we have made a great deal of progress. 135 gigawatts of capacity is not something which can be scoffed. National Green Hydrogen Mission is another big opportunity which is there before us. A relatively young industry is also something very positive. When we are aspiring to have a 500 million ton capacity by 2047 in 25 years, if I mean, do a thought experiment, if we had all of it today in form of legacy capacities, how much more difficult it would have been. But since let's say 320 million tons of capacity would come henceforth, so therefore it's easier for us to go on this path as compared to if we had all of it in form of legacy industries, and therefore uh, somewhat in a better situation. What is uh, difficult for us that we should also take cognizance of, the iron ore quality is not as good as it should be. If you talk of BRI, most of it talk of high grade iron ore, which have iron percentages up of about 65, 64, 65%. Ours struggle to reach about 62%. So there is this 2%. So we have to think of technical solutions that help that. Otherwise, any gas-based DRI, hydrogen-based DRI is not going to happen. So what do we do is something of a challenge to us. Natural gas is, of course, not able to or available at affordable prices. So that the comfort that would have been there for us through the transition gas like natural gas or syngas, etc., is something very difficult. Uh, what I find very heartening is that having laid down this vision or even starting this conversation, a lot of work has moved forward, and I take particular note of the fact of the uh, movement that has happened in the use of biochar. Many of the companies have now started moving in the area of the usage of biochar. SAIL has already done some experiments with their Rourkela steel plants. And I hear from industry players who are suppliers in this domain that most other ISPs have also tried. Uh, if we only do biochar, what's the potential? My own calculations say that we can bring down it by 1 kg per kg of crude steel produced. Of course, there are technical challenges which need to be overcome, and I hope that they are overcome through a kind of concerted and collaborative research and development approach that was advocated by Mr. Mrindu Prakash, the SAIL chairman. The challenges indeed are quite daunting, but given the fact that there is this vision and the policy, we should be able to make quick progress. One area which I have been raising before the minister, and I'm sure Honorable Minister would be taking it up with the Finance Ministry and indeed the Prime Minister as well, is that the research and development budget for the steel sector is quite low. And I think we need to do a lot in order to address this gap of research rupee or research dollars, as we say, in order to move further. But there's indeed a lot which can all be done by synergizing the efforts of everyone together in this task. And the report that came from Madam Manny would be of quite a great help in this area. There are issues that we need to face immediately, and I'm happy that the ministry is already working on them. Uh, one area which I think is very important is the area of beneficiation. Uh, and since I heard that the advisor to Prime Minister and CEO Niti would be coming, so I thought I should raise. But nevertheless, since Honorable Minister is also there, so we would raise this issue. We should support through incentives so that the cost of beneficiation does not cripple the efforts that should go in the area of beneficiation. We have a lot of capacities. The numbers reported in this document itself say that we have about 137 million ton of beneficiation capacity, but which is not being used. And going forward, it should rise to somewhere 175 million tons. But if we are not able to put all of package of incentives and disincentives in form of concessions in royalty or availability of land or water supply, etc., it would indeed be difficult for us to beneficiate. And if we don't beneficiate, the results that ought to come may not come, even if all the efforts are made in the area of use of hydrogen or use of syngas, etc. So that indeed needs to be done. The availability of natural gas is another area which I think we need to work. The area of steel prices getting depressed on account of the trade related concern is also another area which I think is important. Uh, if our steel makers don't make money, how will they invest? So that's a very sound argument, and we can't brush that argument aside because there's a lot of investment that needs to be made. If only we were to retrofit the existing plants with the energy efficiency and other such equipment, the investment needs to be made is of the order of $283 billion. And if we need to move everything to the greening pathway that has been laid out in this report, this should require an investment of about 5 to 6 trillion US dollars. So that's a huge amount of money, and a lot of it will need to be obviously coordinated by the government of India and the ministry working together with the multilaterals, etc. But a lot of money will indeed need to come, and the steel industry indeed needs to have the paying capacity to support that kind of capex. Uh, Obviously, secondary steel players will need further support, and I'm sure we will work out in the mission that uh, the steel ministry proposes, as was mentioned by secretary, needs to look into that. We would also need a lot of organization building efforts in this regard, and when the mission is drawn up, the we would advise the steel ministry to ensure that all those organizational uh, areas are taken into account, and we strengthen the capacity of the Ministry of Steel to deliver on this promise and the premise, and all these stakeholders join together. So I thank Steel Ministry, Honorable Minister, and the Steel Secretary for inviting me to share my thoughts on this occasion. I would I'm very happy that this report is now out in the public domain, and this will energize the efforts of everyone together of the steel fraternity uh, uh, and those who are not part of the steel fraternity, but indeed stakeholders in the process. And together we will march into the direction, as Mr. Prakash mentioned, of handing over the planet to our future generations in with the least damage that would have caused to it. Not saying in the original form that we inherited. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your inspiring words and recommendations. We all have truly noted all the recommendations you have provided, and it's an honor to have you with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a privilege to now invite our chief guest, Shri H. Kumaraswamy, the Honorable Minister of Steel and Heavy Industries, to the stage. A visionary leader, and a driving force behind decarbonizing hard-to-abate sectors. We eagerly anticipate hearing your insightful address. Sir is a dynamic Indian politician, film producer, and businessman. He has twice held the esteemed position of Chief Minister of Karnataka, first from 2006 to 2007, and again from 2018 to 2019, demonstrating his enduring influence in the state's political landscape. In the national arena, Sir represents Mandya as a member of Lok Sabha. A round of applause for our chief guest. Sir.
Shri Sandeep Poundre, Secretary Steel, Shri Amarind Prakash, CMD SAIL, former Secretary Steel Nagendra N. Sinha, Abhijit Narendra, Joint Secretary Steel, Shri Vinod K. Tripathi, Joint Secretary Steel. Good afternoon to all distinguished guests. It's a privilege to stand before you as we unveil the report Greening the Steel Sector in India, Roadmap and Action Plan. This report lays out a comprehensive strategy for steering India's steel industry towards a sustainable and environmentally conscious future. As one of the world's leading steel producers, India's steel sector is the backbone of our industrial strength. It drives economic growth across key sectors such as construction, infrastructure, and manufacturing. However, we expand, it is imperative that we align this growth with global environmental objectives. Sustainability is no longer a choice, it is an essential obligation. India has made significant strides in reducing its carbon footprint. However, for a truly low carbon economy, we must focus on sectors like steel, which have a significant environmental impact. Transforming steel production to be more sustainable involves a multifaceted strategy incorporating cleaner energy adoption, process optimization, circular economy practices, and collaborative innovation. Additionally, a strong carbon market and targeted support for smaller producers are essential for achieving near zero emissions by 2070. India's steel industry has already made significant strides by implementing energy efficient technologies, expanding renewable energy use, and exploring innovative solutions such as green hydrogen and carbon capture. This report dwells into the key aspects of decarbonization, outlining current challenges, innovations, and necessary policy frameworks. It will serve as a vital resource for policymakers and stakeholders dedicated to advancing India's sustainable industrial landscape. It offers a roadmap for achieving low carbon emissions in the steel industry, a vital step towards a more sustainable industrial future. I commend every, I commend everyone who contribute to this report for the dedication and expertise in driving this critical change. Together, we can ensure India's steel sector continues to thrive, embracing the challenges and opportunities of a more sustainable future. Thank you, Jain.
Thank you so much, sir, for the wonderful speech and truly motivating us all. It's an honor to have you with us today. Please now join me to welcome Srimati Neha Verma, Director, Ministry of Steel, to the podium to express gratitude to all who have contributed to the success of today's event.
Honorable Minister Shri H. Kumaraswamy, Minister of Steel and Heavy Industries, esteemed dignitaries on the dais, esteemed guest speakers, industry leaders, and all the participants. We are immensely grateful to our Honorable Minister of Steel for his leadership and support throughout the inception and execution of this event, as well as for the release of our Green Steel Report. Our heartfelt thanks go to Shri Sandeep Pondrik, Secretary Ministry of Steel, and Shri Vinod K. Tripathi, Joint Secretary Ministry of Steel, whose guidance has been instrumental in shaping this event. We are grateful to the members of the panel and session chair, Shri Sanjay Singh, Dr. Anshu Bhardwaj, Shri Abhay Bhakre, Shri Arvind Kumar Singh, Dr. Saurabh Kundu, Shri Prabodh Acharya, Shri Vaibhav Pokharna, and Shri Dhruv Purkasthaya for stirring such an insightful discussion. We are particularly grateful to former Secretary Steel Shri Nagendranath Sinha for his enlightening talk and visionary leadership while being the driving force behind the formation of the task forces and creation of this report. Thanks are due to Shri Amrendu Prakash, Chairman SAIL, for his very insightful address as well as for providing our wholehearted support to this event. The ministry also wishes to acknowledge the exceptional leadership and expertise of the chairpersons of various task forces whose contributions were instrumental in shaping this report. Heartfelt thanks are due to all our knowledge partners and supporters as well. I extend sincere appreciation to all the officers of the Ministry of Steel and SAIL who have worked tirelessly to make this event a success. I would also like to extend our gratitude to all the participants for your active engagement. As we conclude this enriching gathering, let us carry forward the insights gained to drive positive change and innovation in the steel sector. Together, let us continue our collective journey towards a sustainable and prosperous future. Thank you once again for your participation and contribution. Wishing you all continued success in your endeavors. Jai Hind.
Thank you for the kind words and generous appreciation, ma'am. A round of applause again for the dignitaries on stage and our chief guest of today, Shri H. Kumaraswamy. Guests, as we conclude this event, let us reaffirm our commitment to driving the transition to a sustainable and green steel industry. Thank you once again for your participation and support. Please join us for lunch. Our helpers will escort with the area. Thank you once again for joining us today.